Hello everyone, it's me again. I'm here with another video. And today's video will be the finale to what if Marvel sold the opposite rights to their characters. And that of course will be what if 20th Century Fox made an Avengers movie. Let's begin, shall we? The first film would be Avengers, released in 2000. And of course, the film would be almost similar to the 2000 film except Loki wouldn't be the villain. Red Skull would. I think Hugo Weaving could have still played Red Skull. If I were to think of a different actor for Red Skull, I don't know, maybe Brendan Gleeson or Ralph Fiennes? For Captain America, I would say Matt Damon, as a good amount of this film would focus on his relationship with Red Skull. As for the Avengers lineup, it'd be mostly similar, but here's the team. Iron Man would be played by Brad Pitt. Yeah, like in the part 4 with, what if Sony made an Iron Man movie. So this will be confirmed that the Fox Avengers films and the Sony Iron Man movies, well, the original trilogy films take place in the same universe. And this chronologically would be like after the first Iron Man movie. Brad Pitt would play Thor. Captain America. I already talked about Captain America. I forgot. Black Widow would be played by maybe Rebecca Rodgerman or Mila Jovovich. And Hawkeye. He and Hulk would be replaced with Ant-Man the Wasp. For Ant-Man, I would say maybe James Marsden. As for Wasp, maybe Rogue's actress. Though I could also see someone else like Anne Hathaway as Wasp. But either way, they would replace Hulk and Hawkeye on the team. And of course, the after credit scene involving Thanos would be dropped in favor of an after credit scene involving Loki. Oh, and Red Skull would also escape to be a villain in future films. And of course, he would have some henchmen like maybe someone like Madam Hydra and Baron Zemo. The latter of which he has a Megatron / Starscream style rivalry with. Next movie is Avengers Assemble. This is where Black Panther would be introduced, and for who I would cast as Black Panther, I would say Digimon Hunsier, since he was supposed to play him in like Fantastic Four 3, and I believe he did voice Black Panther once in an animated show all about him. As for who would the villain be, it would be Loki, with Egghead played by Billy Zane as a secondary villain. Gamora would also appear as like a side villain. Not sure who I could see as Enchantress, aka Gamora. But Gamora would escape to meet up with Red Skull. And of course, since we have Thor-related characters, the movie would be dedicated to showing to Thor's backstory. So yeah, it kind of acts as the Thor film. Whereas the first was kind of like the Captain America movie. And chronologically, this would take place after Iron Man 2 and before Iron Man 3. And of course, Red Skull would be setting up something. his ultimate plan to take down the Avengers once and for all. And the next film would be Avengers Masters of Evil. This would act as the conclusion to the original trilogy. Some of the new Avengers would be Hulk, who I think could still be played by Eric Bana, and Falcon, who I could see being played by Will Smith, and of course, someone like Captain Marvel. Not sure I could see as Captain Marvel though, but it wouldn't be Brie Larson. I'd probably say Yvonne Strahovski. Red Skull would assemble the Masters of Evil, which would be Baron Zemo, and of course, Egghead returns, as well as Madame Hydra and Amora. And of course, a new villain would be introduced. That would be the leader. And he could still be played by Tim Blake Nelson. I think he still could have played him. But we also would have Whiplash in the movie. And he would be a member of the Masters of Evil. Now, with Egghead and Madame Hydra, they would be the villains in spin-off films about Ant-Man and Black Widow. Ant-Man would be Daredevil, and that film would act as a prequel to the first Avengers movie, showing the origins of the Ant-Man and the Wasp, and how they got married. And Whirlwind would act as a secondary villain, and he would return this film. And Black Widow would also be another prequel film set before the first Avengers movie with Madame Hydra. And Ivan, whatever his last name was, as the villains. And of course, someone like Alec Baldwin or Vin Diesel would play Red Guardian. But now to the events of Avengers Masters of Evil. During the first half of the film, Black Panther would be killed off. He would be killed during a fight with, I'd say, either Whiplash or Baron Zemo. This would be a little nod to the fact that since Black Panther is the Nightcrawler counterpart, Nightcrawler didn't return in, X-Men The Last Stand, so Black Panther dies, sadly. But hey, at least we see his death on screen. And of course, Nick Fury, who would have been a big player since the first film, and would be played David Hasselhoff, not Samuel Jackson. Fury also dies once he is captured by the Masters of Evil, and when he's being tortured by Red Skull would then kill him, and this forces the Avengers to team up to take him down. And we also get, things relating to Captain Marvel's backstory and her whole thing with the Skrulls, and Ant-Man building something called Ultron. And this film would be while it's about the Masters of Evil storyline, it tries to set up different films. And of course, Ant-Man would die. This would be the Hank Pym version. Hank Pym would be killed off during the final battle, and during the climax, Baron Zemo would betray and kill Red Skull to become the new leader of the Masters of Evil, and then Captain America would fight Baron Zemo, and it would seem like Captain America has sacrificed himself to defeat the Baron Zemo, while the rest of the Masters of Evil would be captured. Now, with Loki, I forgot to cast an actor. I would probably say maybe Jim Carrey or Bruce Campbell. Now, even though it seemed like Captain America died, Nat believes she's seen someone that looks like Steve. seemingly confirming he survived. And this would be the film that leads to Iron Man 3, chronologically. Next movie would be Captain America the First Avenger. It would be almost similar to the first movie, except Baron Heinrich Zemo would be the film's secondary villain, while Ermin Zola is more of a side villain. And to better fit within the Fox continuity of the Avengers films, Red Skull wouldn't be sent away to space. He and Cap would fall into the water, but Red Skull would have escaped and would have been out in hiding for a long time. Next is Avengers Initiative. This would act as a prequel to the first Avengers movie rather than trying to be a reboot of the franchise, similar to what X-Men First Class was meant to be. Now, the continuity loose here. Like, is it a prequel? Is it a reboot? The film would see a recast Nick Fury played by Samuel Jackson, and he would be like Nick Fury Jr., the son of Nick Fury from the original trilogy. And the film would also see Red Skull as a side villain, implying his return of Hydra. Now, some of the heroes would be a younger Hank Pym, played by Ian McGregor, who also might have played him in the Ant-Man prequel if they couldn't bring Marsden back, but oh, well. Hellcat, who I think could have been played by Karen Gillan. Wonder Man, played by Nathan Fillion. Hulk, who I think could have still been played by Edward Norton or even Mark Ruffalo. And Wasp, who I think could have been played Mary Elizabeth Winstead. And Black Widow, who I think also still could have been played by Scarlett Johansson. But either way, this would be the film that sees the Avengers come together. And while it was hard to choose as the villain, I decided to go with someone like, I would say, probably Red Skull again. Red Skull would be like, forming Hydra once more, but slowly because he's just starting back up. And of course, he kind of wins at the end because without Captain America there to stop him, he kind of wins this movie because he shoots Fury Jr.'s eye and he kills Hellcat. Whereas Wonder Man, he dies midway through during a fight with Madam Hydra. And so Fury declares that they're going to need someone. And yes, that would be referring to Captain America. And this leads to the first Avengers movie more wisely. Next movie, speaking of Captain America, would be Captain America, the Winter Soldier. The film would be a sequel / continuation of the original Avengers trilogy chronologically. And the film would confirm Steve did survive Masters of Evil, but faked his death. and has been hiding elsewhere. But the overall plot would be mostly the same, except Fury Jr. would be referenced a few times, not physically appearing, as Maria Hill would take up most of Fury's role in the film. This would also be the movie where Nat and Steve reunite, and Rogerman would return to play Nat, and there would have been a romance between Steve and Nat set up in the original trilogy, and you start to get more of it here. As for the villain, Bucky would return this film, and the final battle would see Bucky and Steve team up against Ermin Zola in his robot body, who would act as the main villain here. But all in all, it's mostly the same film. Next movie is Avengers Age of Ultron. This would be the movie that Captain America the Winter Soldier sets up. And the prologue would see the Avengers trying to stop Ultron, who I think could have still been played by James Spader, but ultimately they lose. And this results in the deaths of characters like Hulk, with Banner returning to reprise his role, Sam Wilson, and of course, Rhodes, who would have joined the Avengers by now. Pitt would also return to play Iron Man in this film, and there would be some new Avengers on the team, like Hawkeye, who I think could have still been played by Jeremy Renner, or maybe Jensen Ackles. Mockingbird, who I could see either played by Melissa Benoist, Teresa Palmer, or even Linda Cardellini. And, of course, the new Ant-Man, who would be Scott Lang. And I think Paul Rudd could have still played him. Captain America would be the one sent back in time to prevent what Ultron has done. And it would be revealed that once Ultron won, he committed genocide amongst the people of New York. And Ultron has become like the ruler of New York since then. Essentially, this version of Ultron would be more like Fire Lord Ozai from Avatar The Last Airbender, but if he was a robot. And when Cap is sent back in time, he fights a villain known as Taskmaster, played by Jason Statham. And, of course, he would also see that there's a new villain named MODOK. And a Taskmaster movie would be in development and would act as a prequel to Age of Ultron. Now, MODOK, I would picture being played by Rainn Wilson. Though MODOK would be more of the secondary side villain. He'd be more of the overarching villain. Cap would reunite with Fury Jr. And we get to know why Fury Jr. wasn't in the original trilogy. Because he wasn't ready to join S.H.I.E.L.D. yet. But since the death of his father, he decided to take up his leadership skills and lead S.H.I.E.L.D. into a new direction. The final battle would then see the timelines start to merge after Ultron begins to kill some of the Avengers like Thor and Black Widow. And of course, we also get Scarlet Witch in this film, and Wonder Man would have returned this film as well. And Wonder Man would have been revealed to have faked his death. And Wonder Man would actually sacrifice himself to defeat Ultron. I'd say the way Wonder Man would fake his death is there could be like a little hint at the end of the Avengers Initiative where it's revealed that Wonder Man wasn't really dead, he was just injured. But either way, Wonder Man sacrifices himself to take down Ultron. But then this results in someone being born. That's right, Vision, who I think was still in play by Paul Bettany. But the timeline has now been restored to peace. And of course, Taskmaster escapes, and we get the setup to Thanos. Next is Taskmaster. This film would be a prequel to Avengers Age of Ultron and would be dedicated to Taskmaster's backstory and how it came to be. Throughout most of the movie, he's seen facing characters like Black Widow and Hawkeye, as well as Scott Lang's Ant-Man. And of course, Taskmaster kind of acts like more of an anti-hero, since he is the lead character in this film, and the villain would be MODOK. And AIM as well. And of course, AIM would be destroyed at the end, and MODOK would be captured. The Avengers assume Taskmaster die, when in reality he's not really dead. Next movie is Avengers Infinity War. Movie's mostly the same, except the Guardians of the Galaxy would be taken out completely. Thus, Thanos only has, like, Gamora and Nebula at his side. Like, they're the only Guardians characters that would appear. The film would also see the recast Avengers. Captain America is still played by Chris Evans. Thor, played by Chris Hemsworth. Captain Marvel, now played by Emma Roberts. As well as Falcon, now played by, Anthony Mackie. I also think Sebastian Stan would also still play Bucky here in this film. He would have been playing him since, day one. Not day one. The first Avenger. Black Panther would also return, and he would be played by Chadwick Boseman. The continuity would also start to fall apart somewhat, because he would be rendering the Avengers Initiative as semi-canon to the MCU, and that everything from the original Avengers trilogy all the way to Age of Ultron and Taskmaster are non-canon. So yeah, the continuity starts to fall a little bit. And Spider-Man also doesn't appear because reasons. And because this is all one movie, the movie would end with Thor actually aiming for the head. Thor would actually kill Thanos at the end. But the Avengers' victory comes with the cost of Vision's death. Or better yet, the death of Hawkeye. As a funeral will be held for him at the end. Next movie would be Captain America, Man of Time. This would act as the conclusion to the Captain America trilogy, and Cap would want to pass down the shield to someone else. Also, it takes place after, Avenger for his Age of Ultron. He considers Sam and Bucky as potential candidates, but then he meets someone. This would happen to be James Rogers, who is his son, and Black Widow would turn out to be his mother. As for the villain, this would be the Serpent Society. The villains would be the Serpent Society in this film, and King Cobra would be the villain. This would also see the conclusion to Cap's storyline, as the film would be a father and son storyline, where Cap passes the shield onto James after he sacrifices himself to defeat the Serpent Society, ending the Captain America trilogy on a bittersweet note. Next is Taskmaster 2. The film would show more of Taskmaster evolving into his anti-heroic roots, and would take place after Age of Ultron. As for the villains, they would be the Red Room, led by Baron von Strucker. And this is also where we would meet Yelena, who would start off as Crimson Widow. And I think she still could have been played by Florence Pugh. And there seems to be a romance set between Taskmaster and Yelena. Somewhat. Eventually, Taskmaster would know more of his backstory and how he was raised in the Red Room, and so breaks Yelena off his control after meeting up with Black Widow. And soon they free Yelena from the Red Room, and they end up facing Strucker, who would have a new Red Guardian, like Steel Guardian, as his henchman, and a massive fight ensues, and it ends up with the deaths of Strucker and, of course, Steel Guardian. Yelena survives, but is injured. And we also get a little clue to Nat being pregnant with Steve's child. Something that would have been a thing since Age of Ultron. But Nat sits out most of the movie because of her pregnancy, and this is a movie where she could give birth to James, if I'm being honest. And Taskmaster would leave Yelena with Nat and James. Next movie would be Avengers Secret Invasion. The film would see the end of the original Avengers franchise due to Fox buying Marvel, or at least Disney buying Fox still in this timeline. The film would combine elements of Captain Marvel with the Secret Invasion show. Basically, Captain Marvel would suffer PTSD from her experience with the Skrulls, and she would remember who they are. Talos would, of course, be the movie's antagonist. And the Avengers would have to come together again to take down the Skrulls. And it's a pretty big fight. Even some of the Avengers end up being captured, like Rhodes and Black Panther, and then just got replaced with Skrulls. Even Mockingbird's been captured. And Captain Marvel, who Talos wants back. Captain Marvel's backstory would be similar to her MCU counterpart, but just with the Skrulls replacing the Kree, and she has a mix of her Earth's Mightiest Heroes backstory as well. And of course, she stops Talos and almost kills him, but decides not to. And maybe, just maybe, she sacrifices herself to stop the Skrull ship from destroying Earth. She probably would do something like that, honestly. And the Avengers saga would end there. But then we'd also get like a Young Avengers film, which would focus on the next generation of heroes. The Young Avengers would be James Rogers, Azari, Black Panther's son, Morgan Stark, the daughter of Iron Man, Henry Pym Jr., Hank and Janet's son, as well as Hulkling, who would have been introduced in Secret Invasion, and Cassie, the daughter of Scott Lang, who would be Stature in this film. As for the villain, MODOK would return as the villain yet again. Or, as a better way to bring it all full circle, MODOK would team up with Sin, the daughter of Red Skull, and she would be played by Samara Weaving. And so James would be leading like the Young Avengers, and he struggles with becoming a hero like his father. Like, can he be as good of a hero like his father? His whole arc would be about trying to live up to his father's legacy. And of course, there could be some relationship building between him and Cassie. Speaking of Cassie, I could picture maybe McKenna Grace as Cassie. Or someone closer to who I would have cast as James. I probably would have had Tom Holland play James, so maybe someone like, I don't know, maybe Tegan Croft. I don't know. I really don't. But whatever. And of course, in the end, James would step up and he would decide that maybe he and the Young Avengers can't be heroes like the Avengers. Like, they don't have to be the same exact heroes like the old Avengers. They can be their own heroes. And James would become more of his own hero that's nothing like his father and would defeat Sin, while the rest of the Young Avengers defeat MODOK. So that's What If 20th Century Fox made an Avengers movie. And that concludes What If 20th Century Fox made an Avengers movie. I know you're going to be asking me about the Sonyverse and the Spider-Verse films. To be honest, it's hard to think about that for Iron Man, honestly. It's honestly hard to think about that. But anyways, I will see you all later.